The mountains greeted Neil Brier with the same quiet gravity they had carried his entire life, as though they had been patiently waiting for him to return. At 58, newly divorced and hollowed from years of emotional retreat, he stepped onto his late Uncle Raymond's porch feeling both trespasser and heir. The cabin held the scent of pine, old maps, and a life lived with purpose, stirring memories of summers when Raymond had been the only adult who truly saw him. A lifetime had passed since those days, yet the silence inside the cabin felt unchanged, wide, watchful, and honest in a way Neil no longer felt. As he moved through rooms preserved like a shrine, the weight of all he had lost pressed against him. His marriage, his connection to his daughter Iris, and the version of himself he had abandoned without noticing. Then, among the maps scattered on the kitchen table, he found the brass compass with his uncle's initials, a relic so familiar it made his breath catch. And with it, a letter written in Raymond's unmistakable hand, hinting at truths buried long before Neil knew he would need them. "There's more to it than meets the eye," the letter read, the words trembling between warning and invitation. In that moment, the mountains seemed to shift around him, as if urging him toward something long delayed, some reckoning waiting in the dirt and memory of the ridge only he and his uncle once knew. The next morning carried the gravity of destiny disguised as routine. With Raymond's compass in one pocket and a small spade in hand, Neil followed the half-forgotten trail of a 12-year-old boy guided by a man he had trusted more than his own father. His legs ached with each incline, a reminder of time's passing, yet some deeper instinct pulled him higher. When he reached the ridge, the one marked by the two leaning boulders that had stood like old sentinels for nearly half a century, his breath stilled. Muscle memory guided his hands as he dug through layers of earth shaped by 45 years of weather and silence. Then the spade struck something smooth and impossibly black. He unearthed the stone they had buried together, cracked now around the middle like something waiting to be born. Back at the cabin, with trembling restraint, he split it open. Crystals, violet, silver, blue, blazed in the lamplight like captured starlight. Nestled beside them, untouched by time, lay a weatherproof pouch containing a letter addressed to him, dated July 15, 1980. Raymond's words spilled into the room with the force of a voice long silenced. Lessons about pressure, time, becoming, and emptiness turning to beauty. But then came 3 riddles, 3 more hidden stones scattered across the wilderness of their shared past, and a final instruction that pierced deeper than any memory. Don't dig alone. Bring someone who matters. Suddenly, Neil understood this was no scavenger hunt. It was an inheritance of the soul. Against every instinct to remain solitary, Neil called Martin, the friend who had known him through years of ranger work and quiet decline. Together they drove toward the old fire tower where Raymond had once taught Neil the constellations. The climb was relentless, but at the top the world opened in a breathtaking sweep. Ridges upon ridges, the cabin a faint glint, the sky a dome of ancient stories. They searched the weathered tower with deliberate care until Martin's fingers lifted a loose board revealing a hidden logbook. Inside, Raymond's handwriting filled the pages, intimate reflections spanning decades. Entries about watching young Neil grow into a thoughtful boy, about loneliness behind his quiet ways, and about a woman named Claire, whose absence carved a wound that shaped the rest of his life. Martin said softly, "Your uncle left you breadcrumbs." And he had. Coordinates in the margin led to Glacier Lake, the next riddle. As they descended the tower, Neil felt himself walking not toward answers, but toward the man his uncle had desperately hoped he would become, one unafraid to face his own hollows. That night, under the hush of stars Raymond once named for him, Neil sensed something shifting inside, a loosening, a thaw long overdue. The journey was no longer about artifacts. It had become a pilgrimage into the quiet truths men rarely speak aloud. Glacier Lake shimmered like a mirror between earth and sky, a place where clouds kissed their own reflections and time seemed to bend. Neil and Martin hiked its northern shore until they found the second marker, 5 flat stones stacked with the precision of deliberate hands. Beneath them lay a fossil encased perfectly in shale, a leaf captured across millennia with such clarity the veins seemed to pulse. Neil traced it gently, reminded of Raymond's words about empty spaces forming beauty under pressure. Then his phone buzzed. It was Iris. In her hesitant voice, he heard both distance and longing. Their conversation unfolded cautiously but honestly, touching on hurt, patterns, and the emotional inheritance passed from father to son to daughter. For the first time in years, he didn't retreat. He listened. He admitted fault. He reached back when she reached out. After the call, Martin offered a quiet nod, the kind of nod men give when witnessing a shift too significant for applause. The fossil felt suddenly symbolic. Something fragile made eternal because the conditions were finally right. Neil realized he didn't just want Iris involved, he needed her. So he invited her to the cabin. As he and Martin hiked back, pack heavier yet heart lighter, Neil understood he was opening more than old stones. He was opening the sealed places in himself his uncle had once feared might remain closed forever. Iris arrived with cautious eyes and a guarded heart. Yet as she stepped into the cabin, into the warmth of old maps, fossil, geode, and logbook, her barriers began to soften. They hiked together to Mirror Lake, following Raymond's second riddle. The lake was unchanged from the photograph Raymond kept, a quiet altar where sky bowed to water. Iris found the marker, a deliberate stone placed over a weather-sealed metal case. Inside lay Claire's painting, Mirror Lake at sunset, vibrant and alive even after 45 years. But tucked behind the canvas was another note from Raymond, raw with regret and courage. He wrote of choosing duty over love, fear over risk, and losing the woman who saw him most clearly. "Don't make my mistakes," the letter warned. "When you find someone who sees you, hold on." Iris read the words in silence, then asked the question Neil had avoided for years. "Did you truly love Mom?" His answer was imperfect but honest. For the first time, he let her see the man beneath the armor, the man who had repeated Raymond's mistake of withdrawing instead of choosing courage. They sat beside the lake in a silence that wasn't painful anymore. It was mending. And in that moment, surrounded by mountains and memory, Neil realized the riddles weren't leading him deeper into the past, but toward a future built on truth instead of avoidance. Yet one riddle remained, the most cryptic of all, where I said goodbye, where you'll understand. It haunted Neil, circling in his mind like a bird searching for a place to land. He finally called Claire, expecting a stranger. Instead, he found a woman who had carried Raymond in her heart for 4 decades. Her voice held the warmth of an old story told once more for healing rather than nostalgia. She revealed what Neil never knew. She and Raymond had never truly severed connection. For 40 years they exchanged letters, gentle, enduring threads of a love that could not be lived but could not die. Claire invited them to her home in Kalispell. There, in a modest living room filled with framed seasons of her life, she brought out a wooden box containing every letter Raymond ever wrote her. Through them, Neil glimpsed the vulnerable man behind the stoic uncle, tender, conflicted, afraid, yet unwavering in affection. The final letter held coordinates leading to the cemetery where Claire's late husband rested. It was there, she explained, that Raymond visited each year, speaking truths he hadn't been brave enough to say in life. The realization struck Neil with quiet force. The final riddle wasn't about loss. It was about release, Raymond's release from guilt, and perhaps Neil's as well. At Kalispell Memorial Cemetery, autumn leaves drifted like slow-falling embers across the quiet hills. Neil and Iris found Walter's grave first, then Raymond's, hidden under the patient shade of a tree, marked with fresh lilies Claire had placed not long before. Beneath the softened earth, they uncovered a small lockbox wrapped in care. Inside was Raymond's final journal, written in the months before his death. His entries revealed a man fully aware of his limited time and determined to give Neil what no one had given him, permission to live with emotional honesty. He wrote of Claire's visit months before he died, their first meeting in decades, and the tenderness of acknowledging a love that shaped them both. He wrote about planning every step of this journey, each artifact a lesson, each riddle a doorway, each discovery a mirror. But the most powerful entry was the last. Raymond confessed that his greatest regret wasn't losing Claire, but failing to risk himself fully when he had the chance. He urged Neil not to inherit that fear. "Love completely," he wrote, "even when it threatens your peace, even when it demands you unbecome the man you've hidden behind. Courage is not avoiding heartbreak, but choosing truth despite it." As Neil closed the journal, tears blurred the granite names before him. His uncle's final gift wasn't the geode, the fossil, or the letters. It was the courage to change the story of his own life before it, too, became a sealed stone. When Claire joined them among the headstones, the air felt strangely alive, as though the 3 of them, bound by love, regret, memory, and hope, were completing a circle decades in the making. Claire placed wildflowers between the graves and whispered a soft thank. You meant for both men she had loved in different lifetimes. Then she took Neil's hands and told him the truth no letter had dared. Raymond crafted this journey not to teach him about the past, but to prepare him for what remained. "You still have time," she said, her voice steady with years of wisdom.